Hi everyone, Josh Underley here, the Recycling and Composting Educator at Cornell Cooperative Extension of Broome County.
Hi, I'm Jessica Brewer, and I am the Broome County Recycling Coordinator.
Today, we're going to be talking about some common questions with vermicomposting. If you haven't seen our vermicomposting getting started video, check that out at CCE Broome Online Learning on our YouTube channel there. But yeah, let's answer some questions.
Okay, just to jump right in, once you've got a bin built, what kind of worms should you be using and where can they be found?
The worms you should be using for vermicomposting is red wigglers. Technical term, but very descriptive too. So these are the type of worms that you're going to need to purchase online through a worm grower specifically. You can buy them by the pound. Half a pound to a pound for starting a worm bin is perfect for a household. If you need more, you can always buy more or wait for the population to grow. But yeah, go online, buy red wigglers.
So once we have our bin made, where should it be kept?
You should keep your bin indoors at room temperature. It can be outdoors in the shade in the summertime, but for sake of ease, just keep it indoors, away from any vents or any drafty places, because you don't want the temperature to fluctuate. You just want a consistent indoor around 70-degree temperature, and they'll love it there. Anywhere between 55 at the very lowest and 85 at the very highest, because at those extremes, they'll start to get really sluggish and they won't be as comfortable, but in the middle range somewhere will be great for them. I keep mine at the foot of my bed, but you can also keep it in your kitchen, maybe underneath the sink or something like that, somewhere out of the way, but somewhere that you'll also remember it and use it often.
And what's important to know about maintaining a worm bin?
Moisture. Moisture is important to maintenance in a worm bin. You want to check it fairly regularly, maybe every 2 to 3 days or so. You can open up the lid, either check it by sight, and to do a more thorough check, you can do a squeeze test. So you grab a handful of the bedding at the top, you squeeze with your hand, and then if a couple droplets to a light stream comes out, you're good to go. And what I also do very occasionally is I dig towards the bottom to make sure there's no standing water. If there's standing water at the bottom of your bin, there's too much water in there, and you should add more dry bedding. But routine maintenance, checking the moisture, and also making sure that the worms are happy. If they're climbing up the sides or trying to escape, something's up. Maybe the moisture, maybe you overfed them. So if you're checking regularly, you're going to build a good relationship with it. Then you'll start to figure out what the worms are liking and what they're not liking, and what you have to do to fix the bin for them.
And what do you do if your bin is too dry?
If your bin is too dry, you can use a spray bottle of water and then just have it mist over on top. You don't want to pour water directly onto your bin because then it'll just pool all in one spot and not really disperse well. To introduce too much water into the bin with that method. So a spray bottle would be ideal, just to do that regularly too, just so the moisture doesn't fluctuate.
So you mentioned feeding. How exactly are you feeding your worms the food scraps?
So I keep a little container of food scraps on my kitchen counter right next to where I use the cutting board. I try to cut them up into small pieces, about maybe a couple inches or so. And from there, I could add it to my worm bin. But I go another step further, and I add the cut up pieces of fruits and vegetables that I have into a food processor to make it into like a finely ground consistency. The higher the surface area, the smaller bits, meaning smaller bits of food scraps you have, the easier, more quickly the worms will be able to break it down. So you can add them in the way they just cut them up into small pieces if you'd like, or you can put them through a food processor. Both ways work.
Is there a special way that you're putting the food in the bin, or does it just go on top?
What you're gonna wanna do is dig towards the bottom of your bin, away from where you fed them last, but like right next to it, and then cover it up with the bedding. If you leave the food scraps on top, you're likely to get fruit flies, which is not desired. So by digging towards the bottom, it'll also make it easier for the worms to get at, because then they don't have to be in the light at all, especially because I have vents on top of my lid. So putting it like not trenching, but like covering up your food scraps with the bedding is the best way to go. And try to leave maybe only an inch, maximum 2 inches maybe of food scraps in at the bottom. Because if you pile it too high, then it's tough for them to get inside. And then also the air, there's no airflow and it'll get really smelly. So just a thin layer of food scraps at the bottom in one area, and then kind of go through the bin in a zigzag pattern to feed them, kind of guide them from one side to the bin to the other. So because they're also breaking down the bedding too.
And I know I don't have the best memory. So is there any way to kind of keep track of your feeding schedule or where you're feeding them?
Mm-hmm. What you can do, you can draw like a 3x3 grid on a piece of paper and then tape that onto the top of your lid. And then just kind of mark off with a pencil where you fed them last, making sure that it's oriented right with the bin, of course. Or you can use popsicle sticks to show where you fed them last. So you're not feeding in the same spot, but you know where they're congregating, because they'll all kind of go to that one spot where you fed them last. And then you can use that to your advantage and like feed right next to them, so it doesn't take them long to travel to find the new food, and then just go through the bin that way.
So once you've been feeding your worms for a while, how do you actually harvest those vermicastings?
Once you start noticing that your bin gets noticeably heavy with less material in there, because it's holding a lot more moisture and it's just more dense because you've added food and they've processed all that food, it'll look like dark, crumbly, a lot like soil. That's when you know it's ready for harvest. And what you can do, especially if you've been feeding them in a zigzag pattern so that it broke down everything evenly, you can push all the finished vermicastings to one half of it, add new bedding, and only feed the worms in the new bedding. Over a few weeks, they'll migrate from the finished castings over to the new bedding, and then you can harvest all the finished stuff, spread out the new bedding, and then you're ready for another round of composting.
Great. I think that covers all of our topics for today. Were there any other tips or tricks that you wanted to give to anybody starting vermicomposting?
Try not to overfeed. I know you're going to be very excited to have composting in your own home, and I'm excited for you too. But if you overfeed it, it's not great for the worms. They won't appreciate that too much. So be a little patient, add a little at a time, and make sure they're finishing what they're eating first before adding new food to the bin. That'll help regulate things. It'll help with moisture and also keep fruit flies down, or help prevent them for sure, and keep your worms happy and healthy.
Thank you so much, Josh, for all of your information. And where can people go if they have any further questions?
Yeah, you can find more info at our website, ccebroomcounty.com. You can also watch our composting videos at our YouTube channel, CCE Broome Online Learning. Under the environment playlist, we have a lot of composting videos and more to come too. So stay tuned for those. You can also email me directly, jse67@cornell.edu. You can call me at 607-584-5011.